Okay.
Hi, everyone. Emily Flowers here with the Divorce Allies. And today I'm here with Melissa Gragg. And we're diving into something that every person is going through a divorce needs to understand, and that's leverage. So, not the manipulative kind, real smart and strategic leverage that helps you move the needle on your divorce, making better decisions and protecting your future. So, because let's be honest, too many clients are getting stuck in that drama, the triggers, the tiny battles, and not really making any progress towards the actual goal, getting divorced and rebuilding a secure life. So today, we're going to talk to Melissa about some questions and answers on how to use leverage. And I really think you ought to get out your notebook and pen for this one, because these answers are going to be super good, and we're going to actually create like a little guide for you to go along with this. So, hi, Melissa. Thank you.
Hi. This is awesome. I love talking about leverage and timing and all these fun things.
I love it too. And I just know that we are going to get some super good nuggets today. So, okay, tell me, what does leverage mean? What does it really mean in the context of divorce, emotionally, legally, financially? Tell me what leverage means.
Well, leverage, I think in a lot of situations is, you have a position. You either have like there's marital waste or there's a separate asset or, they've been spending money on, a relationship outside of the marriage. And so you have a position that you're taking either in mediation or litigation, but you also need to find something of proof, right? Because a lot of times, if you want to get a toxic spouse to the table to start negotiating, you can't just say, here's all of our stuff, and here's what I want, and here's what you don't get, right? Because you spent $200,000 on, an outside relationship, because you did A, B, and C. Those things aren't necessarily going to matter. Like if you just come to me and you say, oh, well, I think you absconded with $200,000. The mediator, the other side, the attorney for your spouse is going to say, okay, but how? How did you get to that number? Where did you get to that number? What evidence do you have to provide for it? And so a lot of times leverage is those like everybody wants to think that it's a big complete package. Like, okay, I need all of the documentations from our entire 20 years of marriage and all of the reasons why they, took this money. Not really. Leverage is there was a $50,000 pop over here, there's a $20,000 pop over here, and the total is 200. I now have kind of created a compelling or a reasonable position. And quite frankly, no one's going to care exactly how I got to the 200 at the mediation level, at the negotiation level. They're going to want to know that I have these couple big items that are indicating that there was an issue. And then we're shoring it up by saying, yes, and here's the actual, like, look at this actual sheet of paper. Like, this is the one page where you see the transaction in the bank statement. So leverage is really like an I gotcha, right? Like, this is how I'm presenting it. Most people keep that until the end. And we're saying bring that towards the forefront and use it in the mediation, use it in your negotiations as leverage to get them to come to the table or to give you more of the assets than you would have otherwise because they've depleted some of the assets. So that's kind of a long answer to leverage, but that is, you're trying to find those golden nuggets that kind of convince everybody of your big position, but you don't have to prove out every single last detail.
Well, it's kind of funny that you say it was a long drawn out answer, but it actually answered 3 questions in one. So I was going to ask you what some of the common misconceptions were, and you already answered it. And I was going to ask you to use it in an example, and you did. So really, you did all the things that I was going to ask you to do anyway. And so thank you for that.
Well, and leverage can also be, there is an email there was a text thread. If there is some sort of toxic behavior that you're trying to prove with a custody issue, then when you start to talk and it's a he said, she said story, right? Then everybody's like, well, they have a story and they have a story. Each person has a story. Whereas leverage is, do I have something tangible that somebody could look at, and then it supports my story? It's not just a story anymore. It's a story that has a little bit more depth to it. And also, we talk about this a lot in the Divorce Allies, it's creating contrast. So if they just come with all of these big, stories about you of how crazy you are, and how, you're the lunatic and you're the abusive person, you are not showing up in that same manner. You're saying, yes, this is what I think happened, but here, go ahead and look at this document. Look at this email that they sent to me. Look at this text message that came forward. And you're allowing the documents to speak for themselves. So the difference with leverage and a story is the documents are the leverage. The story is just the outline. That's the presentation of your position. But the leverage is going to be on the actual tangible evidence that if somebody looked at it, it would tell the story for you or support your position or story in that matter.
Yes. Yes. Because every time I get on the phone with somebody, it's like, you're going to think I'm crazy. And I'm like, well, I might not, just because of, what I hear every day. But if you could support that, then we got something here, right?
Yeah.
So,
And even starting it with, you're going to think I'm crazy. You got to get out of that mental mindset, because that's somebody told you that. Like, you're crazy. You keep on saying that. So when you enter in it, all of this is kind of practicing so that you get prepared to present it in a fashion that you don't use that language anymore. You don't even, that's filler language. Like that's just, you're nervous and you're like, oh, I'm going to tell you something crazy, but like, zip it. Just say, listen, let me tell you what happened in this situation. And it is a little unbelievable, but here's the proof of how this happened. That is leverage.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about using experts strategically.
Sure.
Who should a client speak to? What should they speak to them about? When? Can you walk us through like a roadmap? Can you also talk about maybe wasting time or money over involving certain experts with the story and the drama and the this and the that, please?
So a lot of time, and we did this very recently, we had a client that came through the Divorce Allies and needed, like, thought they had a business valuation issue. And I was like, okay, well, let's just do a call, and a 90-minute call. So you pay somebody a small amount to have like a meeting, a tangible meeting, right? And this could be a lot of different experts, but you have a tangible, not an intro meeting. You can have that intro meeting to see if they're the right fit. But after that, just be like, hey, do you have like a smaller price point meeting that I can have? Like, we offer 90 minutes and you can pay for just that 90 minutes. Now, what you're hoping is that somebody looks at the big picture and says, here's what the issues are. So they came and said, oh, I think we have a valuation issue. And I'm like, well, you might have a valuation issue that's about $100,000, and give or take. And I don't know if that's big money for you, but it is money. And, to pay me to do something for 5, 10, 15,000 or any expert, and you get 100,000 is a good cost benefit analysis. Now, fortunately, she was also able to give me kind of more information, and I was able to look at her property statement. And I was like, hold on, why are these trust assets marital? Like, they're clearly separate. Like, the whole point of a trust is to protect it in these divorce matters. And that amount was over $3 million.
Wow.
So they called for this $100,000 issue. And I was like, well, I don't know if you have an issue. A lot of times you don't know what you don't know. And so when you're going to an expert and you're just like, well, I just want you to look at this little baby area because I don't want to spend a lot, right? Go in looking at, how do I get time with you And then I show you a whole bunch of different things because, like, again, even in your space, they could show you a whole bunch of different things. And you could very clearly be like, you can get a mortgage, you can't get a mortgage, here's your issue, da, 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 da. Right. So using experts is containing them in some capacity, but also understanding that you can't contain the documents. You need to give them wide access to the documents. And then you go in, because a situation like I just talked about, you don't need to delve into all the documents. You need to just know that if that's a separate asset, you set it to the side, you agree on all of the marital assets, and then you deal with these separate assets different. It doesn't have to stop because they had mediation, within days, right? So there wasn't time to go through a 20-hour engagement with an expert, right?
Sure.
They had to do it very quickly. So I think that you shouldn't just rely on those consults. You should rely on, like, hey, do you have a small package of hours? Like, can I just tell you some of my issues, right? And again, if you were in the Divorce Allies, you would have like a summary of your issues. You would provide that to them. And then I would go down and I would say, wait, you own trusts. Could you tell me more about those? Those could be separate, right? And it was like literally, and also their attorney was telling them different information. Now, this was financial information and the attorney is a legal information. And
Thank
so
you for separating those.
are you asking the right questions to the right people?
Thank you.
That's going to be a key.
Absolutely. And I think that I also get a lot of outside information that probably doesn't, there's nothing that I can do with, as the expert. And so you saying that, like, what are you saying to, are you talking to me about legal matters? I'm a mortgage person. I can't do anything about legal matters, so, I understand and I need to know some of these things, but it's hard to know. And I think this guide will actually help once we release it with this, but, knowing who to go to and what to talk to them about is going to be essential. And what are some of the questions that clients might prepare for their experts to get the most value? I know they're going to bring the documents. I know they're going to see if they have like a block of time that's like cheaper. And I love those 2 nuggets. Is there anything else that they can do?
Well, the reality is that most of the time when we enter into divorce, we hire an attorney and they kind of gatekeep us and they want to tell us everything. Like the situation that I talked to you about, there are no other experts. There's no other experts on any side. And we've had this situation, even you and I, with a client where the mediator and the third party expert are kind of feeding you information. You have to start to be in control of disseminating that information, understanding that information, not based on what your attorney says. And that's some of the benefits of even the Divorce Allies, is getting a different perspective. And so in any situation, like we're going to have a pro se advocate, former attorney, that is getting information from another attorney that you're kind of counterbalancing. Like, you have to assume that every expert that you talk to is really smart, but they have their limitations. And so when you go in, and you have this happen more often than not, like you're coming in for a very specific piece of the house, right? Just the house. But when they show you all the documents for the house, you're like, Houston, we may or may not have some other issues here.
Absolutely.
I need to talk to somebody else. That's where we say, okay, bring in somebody like me that's either a CDFA or a financial professional that has divorce experience. I have specific business valuation experience. And if you have a business valuation, you cannot just go to somebody who doesn't have that experience, because there are nuances of how people hide money that happens very easily in a business that normal people would be like, well, I think everybody files their taxes normal. No, they do not. I don't even ever have any, like almost all of my cases involve some sort of, anyway, let's not go there.
Right.
So
even in the mortgage world, the taxes become an issue for people that own businesses and things like that. So I'm like, hey, I know you made $500,000, but you wrote off $490,000. So you show $10,000 in income. Right. What am I supposed to do with this?
Right.
Oh, I didn't know, and you're like, you're going to have to pay the man one way or another. So we got to figure this out. So really, we've talked a lot about in the Divorce Allies, we've talked a lot about asking how questions and action oriented how questions and things like that. How can clients control the controllables when everything feels out of control, and utilize the leverage? Because I think they have trouble distinguishing what is actually leverage and what is just story.
Yeah, and we're very proactive in talking about AI. So, okay, you're going to go talk to a mortgage lending specialist and you have these issues. What questions should I ask? You could put that into AI and have a list of questions, and then you have a starting point, and you're like, oh, some of these are not applicable, but you have a good, any meeting that you're going in, if you're going into a meeting of 90 minutes with me, you better be concise. If you want to spend a half an hour of that giving me your backstory that has that literally you're talking and paying money for me to listen, I don't think that that's the benefit. The benefit is that if there's questions that you could answer to AI or the internet, you ask them to the internet. If there are questions that are very specific to your case, like I understand what a separate asset is, I understand how you prove a separate asset, but I have this weird generation skipping trust. And I'm confused at how this specific trust impacts my specific divorce. So when you're going in to talk to experts, you should be asking questions that are the nuance, give them enough information to know the background, which could be in a summary, 1 page, 3 page, 5 pages, whatever it is. And then you're going in and saying, okay, I have very specific questions about the finances or the law. That's why sometimes you might want to always include your other team members in some of these conversations, right? And so a lot of times, like you come in and you bring me a client, you're like, there's some other issues. I want you to be there as well. I want to talk through this because then like you can say, hey, this person didn't know that this is an issue, but hey, Melissa, isn't this an issue over here? So it's almost like you're using that opportunity to ask very targeted questions. And then you have to ask, what impact does this have on my case? What impact does this leverage have on moving the needle? If I prove that they have $200,000 that they spent on a relationship, what impact does that have on it? Well, we're going to treat that as an asset. We're going to say there was 200,000. It sits on his column. And now he received the benefit of that 200,000. He owes you back 100,000 because he could have spent his portion, but he also spent a portion of the marital funds that are yours. So you want to know full circle. Okay, now we have these points, we have these issues. What does it impact? Which ones, like I would come to you and be like, which ones move the needle the most, right? Yeah. Which ones create more leverage, and where should I spend my time? When people come to me, just like the example I gave, I was like, we can certainly do your valuation. Like we can prove up that 100,000. But the reality is I would spend more time on figuring out how you preserve the 3 million of separate assets. Even if you have to give up some, it's going to have a better cost benefit. Like that to me moves the needle. So you're really asking the expert to hone you in on the areas that are actually going to be important. It's not going to be important to prove out every single $20 expense on eating out or doing these types of things are going to move the needle. Like I want big ticket items. I want you to show 2 areas where there was movement of big money. And then I'm going to assume, well, probably all the little stuff is too, right? But at least you would preserve out of that 200,000. If I had those couple big ones, I lock in 150 of it. The other 50 is like minutia, right? Yeah. And again, sometimes you're creating something that you can give away 50 of it. Like, okay, I'll concede to 50 of it is not as provable, but the 150 is solid, right? And so you're kind of working with an expert of how do you create that picture to the mediator, eventually to the judge, but specifically for your settlement offer. And the settlement offer is what you're focused on, these experts, to give you details to present with the settlement offer so that people aren't like, well, why do you think the business is worth $100,000? Oh, here's a one-page schedule, right? So you have to, it's not just advice, it's also what are you going to provide that's going to move or make a difference in my case? And that's going to be a critical question to ask.
Okay, you've literally answered like 4 questions in one yet again, which I love about you because that's usually the case. You're just ahead of it. So we talked about what clients can do themselves without an attorney to build leverage. Getting organized, get your binder together with all your proof. Use AI and the internet to answer the questions that anybody can answer so you're not bogging the expert down and eating up your retainer fees. What kind of tools can you use? Well, the Divorce Allies has tons of tools. You have a property statement. I have a divorce mortgage planning report and summary. Kristen has a parenting plan, very detailed parenting plan, things like that, questionnaires and stuff. Victoria has tools, all kinds of tools ready for you. How can you stay focused? You ask yourself, will this impact the end? Will this make the needle move forward? And the cost of drama, it just eats up time, money, and your position. So we just need to make sure that we're asking ourselves, where's the impact? So final thought.
Yeah.
What's the one thing that I can do today to gain leverage or move toward a fair settlement?
To gain leverage today or move towards a fair settlement, I think that one of the things in the Divorce Allies that is beneficial is you have perspective from a lot of different people who have been in the divorce arena. For the most part, you cannot rely on one person to have all the knowledge and or have the best knowledge, okay? Because there are a lot of people out there that I'm like, I don't know if they're giving the best knowledge, but it is helpful. And so a lot of times just to get a different perspective, like you have an attorney, but you can hear what another attorney says. You have a financial expert, but you want to hear what somebody else would say. You have to get perspective. You can't just be in this like one lane of getting, your information from one source. And because if they mess up and you go through mediation, you may not have any recourse to fix it if you relied upon one expert to do it. So the leverage that you're going to gain is by talking to very niche people and then pulling them maybe even together. And that's what we do in the Divorce Allies is we pull them together and say, hey, you can't just look at the house outside of the full financial picture. You can't look at the separate asset outside of the full financial picture. You can't even look at a custody arrangement outside of a parenting plan. Like you have to kind of start to see the basics. And are there 100 different parenting plans out there? Sure. But start somewhere and start with the end in mind. So where do I want to end up? What would be my ideal situation? And then how can I get there? And where are the unknowns? So I'm unknown about the house or I'm unknown about the trust. Get somebody involved and say, okay, what do I need to know about this that would move the needle in my case? And then what would I do to have to engage you to do some of that if I believe that that is true, right? If I believe that that's going to be beneficial, and how beneficial is it? Like I wouldn't ask somebody to pay for a business valuation. I would tell them to pay the same money to try to get those other assets off the table. And in the process, we also value the business, right? Because it's super easy or something like that. So it's really trying to get them to be the expert and give you some ideas within that short time frame of what to do. But don't ask your friends and family for advice. Don't ask your CPA or your financial planner. These are very divorce specific situations. And quite frankly, the reason why we, I think, have a little bit more head on us about this is because we see more issues, like we see more situations. There's times when I see more cases in a month than some people see in a year. So you want to start working with people that are really focused on this as their main business. A lot of CPAs, a lot of financial planners do a lot of different things, right? And they just know a little bit about divorce. Mortgage lending, you know a little bit about divorce. You need somebody that is very focused on that and get that advice from them. but pressure test everybody's advice. Come into the Divorce Allies and say, okay, well, what do you guys think about my situation? And then go back and say to your person, hey, did you think about this? And they'll be like, whoa, that's a great idea. Great, let's follow down. So you can lead them into ideas or spaces. But if somebody's like, didn't come up with that idea, they may not just know how to operate in that space.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. You have just blown it out of the water. I can't wait to finish up this little guide now that I've spoken to you and get this out for everybody to really dive into and utilize.
What's the guide going to be that you're going to provide?
It is a guide about leverage and the experts to use. Everything that we talked about today is going to be in this guide. I think it's like a 6-part guide. And it has little nuggets. It's got books to read. It's got little, motivational quotes. I've kind of snuck in little pieces. And we're just going to really make this thing come together so that you're taking the story part and making it something real. So if it doesn't have some evidence or document attached to it, then it's just a story. So we're going to end there. And
it's more action items, because I think what we see is a lot of people have a lot of lip service. They have a lot of advice, but you need action items that you can do in order to control the things that you have control over, which you can control your position in a divorce, you can control the evidence, and you can control the big picture. And so I think that it really is more actionable and really like targeting, because again, at the beginning, we're like, I don't know what's important. This will help you kind of hone into what is important.
My clients want the A to Z. Just give me a step-by-step guide, for heaven's sake, and tell me what to do. And because everything's so unique and different, it's hard to give that. But if you can kind of start and just get some clarity on a few things, just like you said, what's missing? What's not, what's this, what's that? I really think that you will create your own step-by-step guide.
Yeah, I love it.
And this will help you do that. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much.